So we had a couple of minutes there to consider the data in the student records, which columns are candidates to be our primary key, and in each case, why or why not. So, this is what I'm saying here. Column name was student number, and that should be a candidate for primary key. I said yes, it should be unique to each student, and it's a good candidate. Simple as that. Student name. Well, if we look at it, it's unique in this name: Mary Shelley, John Cusack, Ada Lovelace, Javier Saviola, and Meg Ryan. They're all unique there, but not necessarily in a larger database. Two students may have the same name, not a good candidate. Student date of birth, again, in this example, it's unique, as in there's no one else that has, or no two people that have the same date of birth, but two students may have the same date of birth in a larger database, not a good candidate. Subjects, is that a good one? No, because even though, is it unique in this example? Not really. What would you think? Classic literature comes up. Yeah, look, it's not necessarily a good one in any way. Two students may have the same combinations of subjects. Okay, that's what they mean there by unique. I thought it was an individual subject. But they're not unique in the same combination. So not a good candidate. The tutor, well, even looking at it there, it's not unique. You have two Rob Reiners, and the same tutor may be assigned to multiple students. So that's not a good one. And the tutor contact number, well, it's not unique. The same tutor, again, may be assigned to multiple students. And so their phone number will appear on multiple student records. So, student number is the only one that should be unique to each student, and it's a good candidate there for the primary key. And remember what a primary key is. It allows you to uniquely identify each record in the database. It allows you to uniquely identify each record in the database. So, composite primary key, I'm not going to spend too long at this, but there is one other option you could consider, but it's not easy, and that's why I'm just going to run through it and read it. It's a composite primary key, and like some of you are doing maths and functions, or when you do the function section, a composite kind primary key is where you're doing more than one thing. You're doing for example, you would use student name and student date of birth together. So composite and function means you do one thing and then you do another. So here it's kind of given this idea of maybe you'd use two columns to make up the primary key. But would this work? Well, answer no. This would be closer to unique than either on their own, but you still could get two students who have the same name and the same date of birth. It could happen, right? And that's why it's an issue. It could throw up a problem there, particularly in a large system. So, what do we do? The best way to do it is to split the table up using making use of what's known as foreign keys. And foreign keys are basically primary keys from another table. What's that phrase? Mother from another brother, or brother from another mother, something like that. So there are several splits you can make on this table, and the most obvious of which relate to the tutors. So it makes little sense to store the tutor information directly on the student table. So what we're going to do is we're going to break the tutor stuff out into its own table. Make its own table, and I'll show you how we link them together, how we relate them. And that's where it becomes known as relational databases. So, how do we do that? Well, let's have a look. This is the original student table. This is the original student table: student number, student name, student date of birth, subjects, tutor, tutor contact number. So we're going to split this table up by grabbing the tutor and the tutor contact number. And now, I'm just going to show you this. If I take all of this data, watch what happens. That's it. Now, I've also given it a tutor ID, but just bear with me here for a second, because this is actually the correct way. That's the correct way there, where you have it all unique. But just to point out, so I've gone straight from this table here, and I've grabbed your Lord Byron, Rob Reiner, Mary Somerville, Carlox Rayak or whatever, and Rob Reiner again. Of course, Rob Reiner is the same. So when I pull that out, look at Rob Reiner is the same, and that's why I've highlighted it in red. You know, you're going to have duplicates. The chooser ID, if I want that to be a primary key, look at, I'm having a problem. I'm getting an ID that repeats there. It can never repeat. It can never repeat. So, in this case, we will also have a new column, chooser ID, which will be the primary key of our table. Note that we copy this data directly from the previous table, so it includes a duplicate row for Rob Reiner. Here's Rob Reiner. This is what we grabbed, the tutor and the tutor contact number, and we're after making a new column there, a new field called tutor ID, which I've highlighted in red. So databases shouldn't have duplicates like this. The actual table should be shown as on the next slide. So that's what it should look like. And now Rob Reiner is given the tutor ID T0002, but that's it. That's that particular Rob Reiner with that particular contact number. If there is another Rob Reiner, and he may have, well, he shouldn't have the same contact number, but you never know. It could be another Rob Reiner, the son or something. But at least they will have a different tutor ID. They will have T004 or 5 or whatever. So, now, what I do to link it back in, and this is where my foreign keys come into play here. Look what I've done. I've now related back my tutor ID back in to the student table. So, remember the student table, it was student number, student name, student date of birth, subjects, and then we had tutor name and tutor contact number. Now we just have a tutor ID which links to this table, and you know the tutor ID then links to the actual tutor name and the tutor contact number. Isn't that right? So, like, that's how you do it in databases. You split things up and you relate them together then. So, as we can see here now, the student Mary Shelley, she has this, the tutor who's 0001, that's Lord Byron, and who has Rob Reiner? So John Cusack has Rob Reiner, that's T002, and the last person there has Meg Ryan, has Rob Reiner as well. Do you see it? So, the tutor ID here is a foreign key. This is a foreign key because in this table, tutor ID is a primary key. It's unique in this table. Unique, will never be repeated. But a primary key, or sorry, a foreign key is a column which is a primary key on another table. In this context, the tutor ID is a primary key on the tutor table. So when it appears on the student table, it is considered a foreign key. Long story short, a foreign key is a primary key in another table. Does that make sense? A foreign key, it's a primary key in another table. So, there it is, tutor ID. It's primary key here, but it's a foreign key here. So, tutor ID, this is a foreign key, which is a primary key in another table. And the foreign key relates the tables, hence the name relational database. So, this is better, but the subject column still isn't ideal. We have no direct way of assembling a list of all history students, for example. So if you wanted to find out who were the only people who did history, can you do it the way it is now? No, not really. It's not direct enough. We need to split up the subjects there. We need to split up the subjects. Or, let's say you had 10,000 students in the same course taking maths. Let's say maths needs to change to Mathematics 101. You'd have to change maths to Mathematics 101 for each one of them. Whereas, if you had it split into its own table, you'd just change it once and it would be done. So, we're going to solve it with new tables. And this is the way I've done it here now. I've split it up into the subject table. And there's your subjects. And I've given it a subject ID so that it's unique. So what's the primary key in that one, Brian? The subject ID, and I've put it on the right there to show you that, just to show you it can be on the right, not recommended, but it can be. It can be, not recommended. Usually you'd put the primary key on the leftmost column, but it can happen there, and just splitting it up. Now, we still have a problem. If I go back there to this table. Right, so let's say I want this person, Mary Shelley, does literature and history. How do I put in S001 and S002 in there? If I do that in this table, you'll have 2 001s, won't you? Matching up. And then that won't be unique anymore. So what I do is I create a student registration table, and I give and now this one, there's no primary key in this. It's actually made up of a kind of a composite key here. The student ID and the our student number. So 2 primary keys put together in another table. Will you finish off that table for me there? Copy and out the above table and finish filling it out. So I'll put up the other table in a moment for you there so you can see it. So take that down there, the table on the right, and you're going to fill that in. Take down pen and pencil, maybe it's probably the easiest. See you in a moment.